So I think when I think about, longevity, for me, it's this concept of living young for a lifetime, right? I mean, for example, I can't really relate to what it is to be 120. I can't relate to what it is to be 150 or 180. Somebody says, oh, I want to be 360. I want to be 720. I want to live forever. I don't even know what that means, right? I mean, it's so abstract that I don't even know what that would mean exactly. But I do know what it is to be young, right? I do know what it is to be vibrant, and I do know what it is to be fully engaged in life from every angle. And that's the life that I want to lead. And I think that's really, in my practice, that's the life that we're working to build for each of our clients, right? So I think this idea of living young for a lifetime, when you frame up longevity through that lens, all of a sudden you can see, oh my golly, there's such a world of possibilities out there that I never even knew existed, right? And so that's the joy and the happiness, if you will, that comes out of longevity. I think, quite honestly, that the longevity equation at aging is going to be solved in the next 3 to 5 years. But just realize that the payoff on this investment of time, attention, and resources is 1,000-fold, right? It's 1,000-fold. What you get back is 1,000-fold. You'll be able to make more money, have better relationships, carry on for years when other people are retiring. I mean, it'll send you on a trajectory that's completely unrecognizable to your peers, right? Who have just decided that, hey, I want to go to the beach and get a condo and see the grandkids on the weekends, right? So, I mean, literally in a decade or 2 decades, they'll be unrecognizable, right?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healing with Coherence podcast, founded by Radiant Life Technologies. My name is Michael. I am the host of the podcast. For those who already know me, you know that my passion is healing, medicine, longevity, athleticism, and everything around staying alive, not only through and in your body, but also in spirit. In my discussions with my guests in Healing with Coherence, I've been trying to look into different ways of how we can approach healing, how we can approach medicine, how we can approach longevity and happiness in life, and how we can use technology for that purpose. Because what I've been noticing and what I've been witnessing around currently in the world is that the entire area of healing, of medicine, and of self-care has been undergoing tremendous transformation. And I've been looking for interesting personalities, experts, and people who have interesting and novel opinions in this area. People who have been inventing new approaches, new modalities, new technologies, and introducing them to humanity in order to help people and humanity as such to make the most out of this transformation that everything in the world is undergoing right now. My guest today is not an exception to this rule, and I'm very happy to introduce you Dr. Jeffrey Gladden. Allow me to read through the introduction that I've prepared for Dr. Gladden so that I can fill you in with interesting details of what you can be expecting from our conversation. So, Dr. Gladden is a leading pioneer in the field of longevity medicine and science. He is the founder of the Gladden Longevity Clinic located in Dallas, Texas. And his clinic is dedicated to optimizing life energy, longevity, health, and performance. Dr. Gladden is also author of a book, which is one of the best-selling books on Amazon in the area of longevity. The book is called 100 is the New 30, How Playing the Symphony of Longevity Will Enable Us to Live Younger for a Lifetime. And the book as such is dedicated to the idea of how changing your mindset on aging and longevity is essential to living young for a lifetime. This is also Dr. Gladden's motto, living younger or living young for a lifetime. And this comes as well from Dr. Gladden's current state of being when chronologically he is 70, but he says that his age is in fact a mosaic of biological ages, ranging as low as his mid-20s, with the majority of the rest of the biological ages in his 30s and 40s. Well, isn't that an amazing concept? And that's very much what we'll be going to talk with Dr. Gladden about. I would like to look beyond only the general concepts of longevity as keeping your body younger and making your longevity markers better. But I would really love to understand more about the deeper philosophy behind the feeling of enjoying life to the fullest in whatever age we found or we find ourselves to be at. And from what I've seen and what I've read about Dr. Gladden, I've been following his Instagram account for more than half a year. I really have a strong feeling that Dr. Gladden is exactly the person that I need to talk to in order to understand what are the deeper concepts and the deeper triggers of feeling young at heart and not only in your body. Because feeling young at your heart and feeling young in your spirit, for me, are the key elements of feeling young and being young in your body as well. So let's jump into our discussion with Dr. Gladden. Let's welcome him and let's see how this discussion will go on. Thank you for being with us. If you have not yet subscribed for our channel, please do that right now, because this will be a great support to growing Healing with Coherence and reaching to new listeners. Thank you so much. Let's jump into our discussion with Dr. Jeffrey Gladden. Dr. Gladden, hello. Welcome to Healing with Coherence.
Oh, good to be here, Miguel. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure. As I already shared with you, I see a lot of touch points in your philosophy with the way how I have been approaching longevity as such. And there is a lot of things that I've been as well learning from your Instagram channel. So it's a great opportunity to discuss all of this in more detail.
Sure.
Dr. Gladden, I would start with a question. Obviously, longevity is a huge trend which has grown into kind of a new fashion, I would say, globally. What is your outlook on how this has been happening? Why longevity has become such a trend during the last couple of years?
Well, I think when I started doing this back in 2012, when I left cardiology, there were people talking about it, certainly people interested in it. People have been interested in this, of course, for centuries, right? I mean, for thousands of years. It's always been trending in that sense. I think what's shifted is that the science, a lot of it popularized by David Sinclair, but others as well, has started to demonstrate that turning back the clock, which of course is the prerequisite for longevity, is actually becoming possible. And so I think people are actually starting to see that practitioners that have been working in a functional medicine space, which is, sort of a different approach to traditional medicine. It's still not inherently longevity medicine, but it also, certainly dovetails very nicely with it. People start to see that when they work with a doctor that thinks, or a practitioner that thinks in a different way, more about, what's causing the problem, and then comes up with more global solutions, if you will, and all of a sudden their problem goes away, or certainly is managed without medications. People start to relate those stories. And so I think it wakes up the public to, oh, maybe there's maybe there's another pathway besides traditional, sick care medicine. And I think that, coupled with the research, and then many people, have really sort of started to champion the idea of either living for a long time or cracking, the Hayflick limit, like getting past 120 years and things like this. So I think it's just kind of hit a tipping point, really, in terms of all the things that have been happening. Yeah.
I see. I see. Well, obviously, people, as you said, they've been willing to live longer for ages. It's always been. I don't think there has been a time when people have been, in general, happy with how long they've lived, and they always wanted to live longer. But this has led me as well to percolating on what is the meaning of longevity. Why people should live longer? Is there a reason for people to live longer? What do you think about that?
I think it's a fabulous question. I just gave a talk at RadFest in California a couple of weeks ago. I'm about to give a talk this weekend at another conference in California. Um, and basically, you could look at this through several different lenses. One lens is, what's the social impact of people living longer, right? So from a very sort of economic kind of perspective, one reason to live longer is to be productive longer, to be able to contribute to society longer, not to be a burden on society, but to continue to not only share accumulated wisdom, but actually contribute to the economic engine, if you will, that keeps the economy going, right? And I think a lot of people think that people are living longer, they're actually going to be this huge drain on society, that younger people are going to be forced to support a much larger group of older people than they're already being asked to support, right? I mean, we're getting a sort of an inverted pyramid, right? So many countries are struggling with birth rates and things like that. So I think when I think about, longevity, for me, it's this concept of living young for a lifetime. Right. I mean, for example, I can't really relate to what it is to be 120. I can't relate to what it is to be 150 or 180. Somebody says, oh, I want to be 360. I want to be 720. I want to live forever. I don't even know what that means, right? I mean, it's so abstract that I don't even know what that would mean exactly. But I do know what it is to be young, right? I do know what it is to be vibrant, and I do know what it is to be fully engaged in life from every angle. And that's the life that I want to lead. And I think that's really, in my practice, that's the life that we're working to build for each of our clients, right? So I think this idea of living young for a lifetime, when you frame up longevity through that lens, all of a sudden you can see, oh my golly, there's such a world of possibilities out there that I never even knew existed, right? And so that's the joy and the happiness, if you will, that comes out of longevity. Um, so I don't know, that's one lens to look at it through. The other one, though, is I think, quite honestly, that the longevity equation at aging is going to be solved in the next 3 to 5 years. There's so many things happening right now, things that we're involved with, things that we know about, things that we're getting involved with. The advent of AI, the acceleration of AI and large language models, and it's accelerating at a pace that I don't think people even anticipated 6 months ago, quite honestly. And now when you talk about, AGI or artificial general intelligence, and then you talk about ASI, artificial super intelligence, and then you start to bring in, advances that are being made in quantum computing and things like this. I really think people will be stunned at how quickly this progresses, because it's hard for us as humans to relate to exponential growth. And what's happening is that, even in the training models, right, for these large languages, they're running out of data, right? They've already consumed everything that the world has ever produced, right, to train these models. So, if you can get your arms around everything that anybody's ever known, right, and now you're looking to train it beyond that, I mean, you can just imagine the power that's there to do research kind of in silico research, rather than having to wait 10 years for a study to be completed. You can probably predict things within a matter of seconds that would take you years otherwise. So when you think about this acceleration, I really believe that aging will be cracked in 3 to 5 years. So let's presume that it is, right? Let's just say, okay, aging, right? Everybody listening, you can live as long as you'd like now, right? And yes, there'll be some investment of time, attention, and resources, right? That's not going to be free, but you can do it. You can do it. And and then the question I raise is, well, now what? Right? Now what? So and I think that's the really interesting question. I think that was part of the question that you were asking, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Yeah, I see you nodding your head. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll just make a short entry into what you're saying, because I feel where you are, where possibly you are heading to. You mentioned and I love your motto. I love your motto, live young for a lifetime, because from what you say and from what I've seen, actually, to live young for a lifetime means when we are young, we are curious about the world around. We want to expand our knowledge. We want to expand our experience. And as we age, this kind of a circle of curiosity and experience starts to diminish. And that's my question as well. So, okay, so I can live 300 years, right? After 5 years,
Mhm.
the riddle is resolved. But
Right.
if I remain with the mindset of an 8 years old age, as it is accepted by general public, will I really make something real and interesting and valuable out of the next 220 years?
No,
So,
I don't think you will. I don't think you will. I think what you'll do is you'll basically sit there and kind of resist all the change that's happening, right? Which is going to be stressful. Um, to your point, I think the childlike mind that's curious and playful and willing to try and learn from experience and not be uh, associated with a persona that's related to competence. Like when we go through school, right? School really does so many bad things for us. It does some really good things, of course, but it does some really bad things for us. And one is that it basically grades us on whether or not we're getting the right answers. And so we learn that we need to get the right answers, right? And so we go through life with this mindset that in order for me to be competent, I have to have the right answers. And now if we're presented with something where we don't have the answers because it's new and it's different and we don't know what it is, we're unwilling to try it because internally it makes us look incompetent either to ourselves or what we perceive others will see us as. And that, quite honestly, is a massive detriment, right? Massive detriment because we lose curiosity, we lose our ability to go forward and learn new things. So I think the other thing that I've distilled that down to is this concept of binary thinking.
mhm,
We end up going through life feeling like we're on a mission to find our answers, right? This is what it means to be spiritual. This is what it means to be political. This is what it means to be relational. This is what it means to be, economically viable. This is what it means to be a professional, right? And we get all these different areas of life and we find our answers, right? Now I affiliate with this party and this is my profession and this is the way I see marriage or family or whatever it is. And and yet I think that's binary thinking. We basically lock ourselves into binary thinking where, you know, the person who's come to their answer, they feel like their answer is the correct answer
mhm,
and everybody else has the wrong answer, right? And when you think about that, the history of the world and certainly today's current events, all the issues could sort of be looked through the lens of binary thinking, right? Look at the Middle East, look at Russia and Ukraine, look at, things going on in the Far East, look at Korea and everybody. It's like, or the US for that matter, it's like we're right and you're wrong. That's binary thinking, right? Our way is right, your way is wrong. And what does it lead to? It leads to conflict over and over and over again, right? And so I think a better way of thinking is called quantum thinking.
mhm,
And quantum thinking basically is inherently curious, but in a quantum computer, in a binary computer, the kind of computers, everybody knows it's a one and a zero, right? It's a binary system. Binary simply means there's two variables, 0 and 1. We have base 10 numbers, right? So that's a base 10 system, but computers are binary. So with quantum thinking and quantum computing, there is a 1, there is a -1, there's a 0. So imagine a line, -0 at the bottom, 0 in the middle, 1 on top, and then there's a sphere around that. And that sphere is a sphere of all possibilities, all possibilities. So when a quantum computer is solving a problem, it's looking at the field of all possibilities to come to the best solution for this particular question at this time, right? And I think as humans, we need to move away from the concept of we feel secure because we found our answers. I think we need to feel secure because we're curious and we're looking and we have the ability to think in a quantum way where we can actually also find the best solution in this moment for this particular question. You know, take any conflict around the world. You know, if people were thinking in a quantum way, okay, let's step back from the binary, right? You know, the history, the binary, the this, you did that, you said this, blah, 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 blah. And we looked at it through a different lens, we would be able to actually come to solutions. And from those solutions, you could start to work together. And from working together, you could actually start to appreciate each other. And from there, you could actually build a different system, right? And
Absolutely.
so I think if you're going to live 200 years or 300 years, you know, I don't want 300 years of more wars. I don't want 300 more years of more scarcity mindset, right? I want to live in a world that has an abundance mindset, that people where they're not thinking in a binary way, but they're thinking in a quantum way, and we can actually accomplish things together that humanity has never even approached before. To me, that's the real possibility of all this. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see it very much like that. Maybe I would use different words to explain it, but I really appreciate the way how you explained it through different the two types of computing, let's say.
Mhm.
And absolutely, for me, you know, actually, when I started looking into longevity, into the concept, at the beginning I was really very much attracted by the numbers, you know, like looking into all theological numbers and marks and actually finding ways how to improve them and so on. And then at one moment I really started to understand that actually it is not really about the numbers, but it's about the quality of life that I'm having in a certain age. And that quality of life is actually the ability to go into unknown, to be curious, to see and learn new things. And actually it goes vice versa. When you do it, you feel younger. When you are younger or feel younger, you have the ability to do more of that.
That's right.
And that's how I understand your philosophy as well. Live younger for a lifetime, and by
That's
that
right.
actually I also somehow the pressure of having to prove that I can live to 100 or 200 years of age somehow disappeared, because I don't really care about it anymore. Really, I
That's
care
right.
about how I feel now.
That's right.
And of course, I hope for an outlook to feel like that long enough in my lifetime.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a really good point that you bring up. When you start to focus on living young for a lifetime, uh, you don't really care. And this is going to sound odd because of the longevity conversation, but in one sense, you don't really care how long you live because what you care about is the fact that you're able to contribute and you know, live in this space of creativity and you know, if you can maintain that and keep that going, you just want to keep going. But if you know, if a bus hits me today on the way home, I will be so grateful for the life I've had, right? What a beautiful experience this is. There's not going to be remorse over that. It's going to be what a beautiful experience that was. And I think, you know, what I saw with aging, particularly with my, you know, in my own family, everybody's experienced this in their families. You know, I saw my grandparents age, and I was very close to them. And, you know, my grandmother would tell me over and over again, Jeff, you don't ever want to get old. It's hell to get old, right? It's
Mm.
hell to get old. And then my mother picked up that mantra. And, you know, I think that's why another thing that I do from a mental standpoint is I don't ever identify with my chronological age. So I wake up every morning 27, right? And the book I wrote, 100 is the New 30, you know, I was born in 1954, in February of 1954. So you can do the math. But the point is that I wake up 27 every day. And when I have my next decade birthday, I'll be 28. When I have the next one, it'll be 29. And when I'm 100, I'll be 30. So, right. So, but when I wake up 27 every day, I can't begin to tell you how incredibly powerful that is. Because when I don't feel 27, I never, ever, ever, ever say, oh, yeah, but you're so good for your age. You're so much better than most people your age, blah, 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 blah,
Mm.
blah. I never, ever say that. It's like, no, I'm 27. You know, I hurt my knee. I did this. No, I'm 27. I'm going to heal. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And so when you have that, really that dedication, it's really dedication and commitment to being young and living young. That drives so much in your life. You will stop complaining about your aches and pains. It'll be like, oh, I'm 27. Yes. Okay. Yeah, this hurts. Let me figure out what I need to do to fix it. Let's go get this fixed, right? Because I'm 27. And the next thing you know, now we're out surfing again. Now we're snowboarding. Let's go mountain biking. Let's go hiking. Let's go do whatever we love to do, right? Let's make love for that matter. It doesn't matter. I'm 27. Let's go do it, right? And so it's so empowering. It's so empowering. I can't begin to tell you the number of times when, I've been beat up from, a couple of injuries related to this or that, because I'm very, very active and I don't want to stop being active. And, I'll wake up and I'll be like, man, it's hard to get out of bed, but it's like, no, I'm 27. And there's sort of that flicker of like, well, maybe I should just give in. Maybe I should just, give in. But I never do. It's like, no, I'm 27. We can make this work. And the next thing a week later, 2 weeks later, whatever it is, it's like, no, we're back. It's great. It's all good. So it's
I
beautiful.
think I think that actually with the pain, I can resonate with that a lot. I think it is just that when we were really chronologically 27 years old age old, we just didn't complain and moan that much about the pain. I think like people learn to
Right.
moan with age.
Right.
So in a
That's
way.
right.
And I really love your concept about the mosaic of biological age. And I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you to explain a little bit more to about the listeners. What is that? Because you say that actually chronological age is not your true age, but it's in fact we are a mosaic of biological ages. How that
That's
works?
right.
How you look at that?
Well, there are many. Well, first off, everybody has a birthday, so we all know our chronological age. Whether you choose to identify with it or not is completely up to you, right? You don't have to. But then when it comes to understanding your biology, you need to understand that there is no one test that can be done that can give you your biological age,
Mhm.
right? So when I got going with this, I was testing telomere lengths and I was looking at mitochondrial function, and then we started doing DNA methylation tests, and then we started doing DNA methylation tests not only in the blood but in the urine, and then we started doing brain, and then we started doing cardiovascular fitness assessments and things like this, and looking at arterial thickness and stiffness, and it just dawned on me that for all of us, we're a mosaic of many, many ages, right? Like you can have a heart age that's decades younger than your chronological age. You can have arteries that are 1 decade younger. You can have a brain that's 1 decade older, right? And so you've got to basically understand that you're only as young as your oldest age. So you want to go in and map your biological ages so what are your assets, what are your liabilities, and how do you bring your oldest ages back into line with your aspiration to live young for a lifetime. So that's how it came about, really. It's a very functional concept because it gives you targets to go after,
Mhm.
but you won't know what those targets are unless you measure them, right? So otherwise you think, well, I'm this, I look pretty good, so I must be fine, but that's not how it works. So yeah,
Okay, okay. So
yeah.
what are the measures that you work with in your clinic, for example? The main measures that you are measuring, following, looking at when it comes to
Yeah. Well,
aging.
the first thing is to understand your genetics, right? If you
Hmm.
don't know, see, we're all in a game. We're all in what I would frame up as an exponential game, right? Aging is an exponential process.
Hmm.
It's not a linear process, and yet we relate to it in a linear way, right? It's like if I were to ask for the audience, just ask yourself this question: what am I going to be like 10 years from now? What am I going to be like 20 years from now? Right? Just ask yourself that for a second.
I know what I
It's
hope
all
I will be.
right. It's almost impossible to imagine you will be anything different than you currently are,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And
hmm.
yet, when you look around you, right, look at your own family. you know that people age so much more between 70 and 80 and 80 and 90 than they did between 20 and 30 and 30 and 40, right? So much more. So we are in an exponential game of decline. It's not a linear game. And yet we have a very hard time relating to that because we can't feel it. Even though we see it all around us, we still can't relate to it. So it puts us at a big disadvantage if we want to live young for a lifetime, not to even know the game we're in. We like to mollify ourselves like, no, I'm okay. I'm good. This is like the worst statement. I'm good. Because it's like saying, yeah, I'm in the Niagara River headed towards the falls, but I'm good, right? I feel okay now. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of very
Yeah.
foolhardy. Yeah. So anyway, so when you understand that you're in an exponential game, then you need to create an exponential strategy, right? And one of the problems with longevity is that there are many, many linear strategies out there for an exponential problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if longevity, the field of longevity has a weakness, it's that you have many people touting this supplement or this peptide or this stem cell or this, that, or plasmapheresis or young plasma, whatever it is, as kind of the holy grail of youthfulness, right? When in actual fact, all of those can play a role, but individually and even somewhat collectively, there's still a linear strategy to an exponential problem. And so I think what's so important is to actually develop this exponential strategy. So I think the way to do that, is kind of the way that we've done it, which is to look at the entire person. So there's basically 5 elements to an exponential strategy.
Okay.
The first one is life energy, right? We'll call that the psychospiritual space.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if your head's not on straight, if you're not curious, if you're anxious all the time, if you're stressed all the time, if you're addicted to things, right? Then you're never going to get there, quite honestly. I don't think. You're certainly not going to get into this vision of this youthfulness where you're having an expansive mindset and you're growing and learning and contributing and all that sort of thing, right? So so that's really critical. The second one is longevity, which is related to the actual drivers of aging. What's actually driving the current in the river? In the river, it's gravity, right? Gravity is pulling the water downhill. But in aging, what's pulling us downhill?
Mm-hmm.
Most medicine focuses on symptoms, right? I'm an interventional cardiologist by training. If you had symptoms, you came to me and I had something to give you, right? And then functional medicine is like root cause medicine. So it's a layer below. It's like, well, you have a rash. It's like, well, why do you have that rash? Oh, you have a leaky gut and you have food sensitivities. And let's fix that. And well, lo and behold, your rash goes away instead of just giving you a cream, right? Or a steroid. So that's functional medicine. But longevity medicine sits below both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Longevity medicine is focused on what's actually driving the aging process. And those can be thought of as the hallmarks of aging. It goes beyond that to some extent, but there are hallmarks of aging that have been talked about in the literature. There were 13 published, or 9 rather, published in 2013. We're up to about 16 now. The point is that understanding those processes and measuring where somebody is relative to those processes, that becomes very, very important, right? So that's part of an exponential strategy. So that's the longevity circle. The next one is health. And the foundational piece of health is understanding your genetics. You know your family history. Like my aunt had cancer, my uncle had a heart attack, or whatever it was, right? But if you don't know your genetics, if you don't know the cards you're holding, right? Those are the cards you're holding. How are you ever going to win a game when you don't even know the cards you're holding and you don't have an exponential strategy and you're in an exponential game? There's no way to win that game. So you really have to get your genetics tested. And so we test through multiple companies because it's not about gene sequencing, it's about reporting. So we can give somebody as complete a picture as possible of the cards that they're holding, right? And then in the health circle, of course, all the different organ systems can be evaluated. They all have an age, right? Your liver, your kidneys, your brain, your lungs, your heart, all of it. So we look at your bones, all of that is looked at. And then the next circle is performance.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I'm 100, I want to be fast, agile, strong, quick, balanced, right? With great cardiovascular capacity, recovery, and flexibility. But if I'm going to be that at 100, I have to be that today, right? If I'm not that today, there's no way I'm going to be that at 100. So when you're 18, you go out for a run and lift some weights and you're pretty good, right? It's like, oh, I'm pretty good. Maybe I need to do some stretching, but I'm, pretty good. But when it comes to, when you're in the later decades of life or these subsequent decades, you got to train all those different aspects. You've got to train flexibility, you got to train quickness, you got to train agility, you got to train balance. And really what it boils down to is you're training your nervous system, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So you've got to train for performance. And then the final circle, the fifth circle, is basically understanding the environments that we live in, right? We all live in 4 environments. We live at home, we live at work, we live at business travel, and we live at vacation travel. And that's probably at least 95% of it. So if you haven't architected each of those environments to support the mission of living young for a lifetime and keeping you healthy, then you're going to miss out too. Because if it's difficult to know where your sneakers are or what kind of exercise you're going to do today or where you're going to source good quality food in each of those environments, then it's just so easy to kind of fall off, right? I mean, I've had clients that were doing like so great and they said, oh, I was doing fantastic. I felt better than I had in 20 years. We went to Italy for 3 weeks and the wheels came off. It's like, because you see what I mean? And so if you haven't architected how you're actually going to do this in these different environments, then you're going to kind of fall off the wagon. So those are the 5 areas. But when you put all that together, and we haven't gone into it in great detail because there's even more insight in all of that, of course, but that's sort of the framework, if you will, for an exponential strategy. So.
Well, that's quite complex, isn't it? I don't think people actually tend to think about it like that about longevity, actually, in
No, they don't.
general. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Right.
it's a long journey actually to take them to understand all of that and basically to start working to take the
That's right.
responsibility for each of these areas in their life.
That's right. I will tell you that when I walk people through that, it really resonates with them, though.
Mm,
They all really feel like, oh, okay, finally I can see it. Okay, now I can see, right? Because they feel like they're throwing a dart against the wall and hoping it sticks, right? Like, well, I tried that and I did this, and I've got a chiropractor that does this, and I'm doing that. But all of a sudden, they can have a complete context and system to work through, and it's very reassuring to people. So. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, for me, I have actually developed something which I call my longevity protocol, which is pretty much as well trying to cover all areas of my being and
Nice.
a lot of important areas in that longevity protocol is actually the spiritual and the mental side of thing. And when I speak
Agreed.
about spiritual, it is really I mean, I see a lot of depth into the saying basically young spirit in the body. Keep your
Hmm.
spirit young in order to feel longevity and to enjoy life as such. And for me this is not just a saying, but it's really a formula of like longevity formula, and keeping that spirit young is something that I've been looking into and trying to find once on one side to work to do my inner work, let's say, to keep
Hmm.
in touch with my spiritual core and to empower my connection or improve my connection with greater powers they are out in our lives, and then as well
Hmm.
to search for really simple activities. And that's for me actually athleticism and movement, which give me a real joy in life, and
Hmm.
that's where I'm refreshing my spirit.
Right.
How do you see this area? How do you work yourself on this area in your life?
Yeah, it's front and center for me. You know, I mentioned earlier that I did a talk at RADFest, and in the talk at RADFest, I talked about how I think aging will be cracked. We'll crack
Hmm.
that code in 3 to 5 years. And then I took the audience, and maybe I'll take you through the same exercise that I took the audience through.
Please
So
do.
I'm gonna ask you 3 questions, and if you're in the audience, you can do this too, right? So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. I want you to take about 30 seconds to feel into it, feel into your answer. Not only just think about it, but feel into your answer, right? And then let me know what it is. And if you want to, I don't know how that works with your podcast or whatever, but if people want to write these answers in, would be very curious to see what they put in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there'll be 3 questions, and then and then I'll offer you things that I've discovered as well. So the first question is, and I had the people in the audience close their eyes. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes so you can just feel into this. And the first question is, to the best of your ability, what's the meaning of life?
Meaning of life for me is to fulfill a certain role that I've been born with or for.
Okay. To fulfill the role that you've been born with. Beautiful. Okay. Now, the second question is, what's your purpose?
That's something that I've been working with quite a lot. To my best abilities, I can express it as to be a servant to God's purpose.
Be a servant to God's purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, beautiful. All right, the third question is, if you were to distill down everything that you're doing to one thing that's going to enable you to fulfill your purpose and step into the full expression of meaning in your life, what would that one thing be? What's the one thing?
Like an activity, you mean, or can you repeat that for me, please?
Yeah, what's the one thing that you would focus on to really kind of get at how you're going to connect to the meaning of life and implement your purpose and live young for a lifetime? What's the one thing that you would focus on?
It would be to be true to myself, to be a truthful expression of myself, and I would say myself with big S, like my big
Okay.
self.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm curious what the audience answered, but that's great. You can open your eyes, Miguel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. So at the conference, I had people shout out their answers, right? And there were a variety of different answers, of course. I will tell you that in my experience of this, I've done some really deep spiritual meditation practices, and I've been able to really get in touch with some really profound insights around connecting to source energy and consciousness and pure love and things that's behind everything. And what's interesting is that I've also followed physics for a long time. I got really interested in science, of course, in seventh grade. I had a guy that was a science teacher that really kind of stimulated my interest. So I've been involved with cosmology and physics and everything. I was a chemistry major in college, took a bunch of physics. And anyway, the point is that we have had this concept that the physical world is what gives rise to consciousness. And yet now physics with the JWST and some of the other findings around quantum physics, et cetera, people are starting to understand that potentially, even the physicists are talking about that, the consciousness actually gave rise to the physical world. Right? And so if you take that tack that consciousness actually precedes everything, right? Then the insight that I've had is that consciousness is pure love. It is pure love. And what does consciousness love to do? What does love love to do? It loves to create. And the universe is an expression of that creation. And it created a universe that is also self-replicating and creative, right? With beings like us that can create, right? And what does that result in for consciousness? Pure love creating, the result is joy, tremendous joy in the creation process, right? Tremendous joy. And so for me, that became my insight. This is the meaning of life. It's love creating and the joy that comes from that creation. And so my purpose is to actually live in that loving space, create from that loving space and create joy and share joy around the planet with all of the planet. Nobody left out. That's my purpose. And the one thing that I need to focus on in order to do that is to optimize my nervous system, how I think, what I feel, what I believe to be true, what I believe to be possible, how I perceive reality, how I perceive myself, other people, how I move through space. It's all down to the nervous system for me. So that's my insight into it. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. It's it's exactly what I was actually trying to express. Said with the different words, I could just feel that it's basically you are expressing very similar thing. Because
Yeah,
by if you take that we all are actually these channels of this true love and one love, and optimizing your nervous system is a very very practical way of stating that we need actually to learn to be true to the expression of that love, because
that's right.
whatever if I mean we've been growing with so much social conditioning of what shall we do, who shall we be, how should we behave. And when we are channeling this love through all these misconceptions, actually the result is something false. It is not our true self and our true expression. So
Right.
we lose touch in life with life. We lose touch with the source, and then we lose the joy of living.
That's
That's
right. That's right.
exactly my expression of longevity and the formula to longevity.
Yeah, I love it. High 10, high five. Yeah. I mean, I think we're on the same page here. I wonder if the audience is feeling the same way. In the life energy circle, um, we talk about a growth mindset, which is, are you married to your questions or are you married to your answers? And if we go through life and we feel like our job is to find our answers, then, that's what'll happen.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, all progress doesn't come from answers. It comes from questions because all answers, quite honestly, have a shelf life, right?
Mm.
Things are going to morph, going to change, even what we just described here, that will grow and change. It will morph. It's not static, right? And so it's so important if you're listening to this to understand what questions you're asking, right? Because if you're asking, well, how do I retire? How do I move into a condo by the beach and see my grandkids on the weekends? Then that's great. It's wonderful. But those are the answers that you'll get, right? But if you're asking different questions, like, how do I live young for a lifetime? How do I make 100 the new 30, right? How do we crack the Hayflick limit and live well beyond 120, right? And how do we make 100 the new 30? If you're asking questions like that, then those are the answers that you'll get. And we're fortunate enough to live in a time where those answers are not just, pie in the sky. They really are coming forward, right? So if you're listening to this, I would just encourage you to set your answers aside and say, those were, yeah, I realized I got to those, but if we're going to expand into a bigger sense of longevity and personal expression and becoming the full expression, the unencumbered expression of ourselves, then, I need to ask bigger questions, right?
Mm.
So that would be my take. The other take is one of the areas on psychospiritual circle, the life energy circle, is mental health. And I feel like everybody on the planet has suffered trauma. I've never met somebody that hasn't had traumatic experiences, right? Either growing up, either through a parent, a sibling, a bully, relationships, breakups, whatever it is, right? So we've all experienced trauma. And the thing is, when we experience trauma, we end up living in reaction to that trauma, right? It kind of puts us on tilt. It's like, well, I got burned doing this, or this happened to me, and I'm going to stay away from that, and I'm going to do this, right? And so we end up going through life on tilt, like a poker player that's lost three hands, and now they're on tilt, and everybody on the table knows they're on tilt. But the point is, you're going through life living in reaction to stuff. And I think it's really our hero's journey, if you will, to really say, okay, what is it that I assume to be true, but I'm actually living on tilt, right? Um, it could be something like, I'm suspicious of everyone I meet, right? Nobody's truthful. Nobody can be trusted, things like this, right? These are concepts that we've developed and we've internalized. And so it's like, is that really serving me? And so then you can actually dive into that and deeply understand that. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Who was involved with that? How did I actually learn that that was, something that I should respond to? And once you understand it, then you can actually go back and forgive the people that were involved, right? You can actually forgive. And once you forgive those people, you then have the ability to transcend it. When you transcend it, you become grateful for everything that ever happened in your life. And it's a different way of seeing it, because all of a sudden now, all those things that happened just made you wiser. They gave you more empathy for other people. You don't have to live in reaction to them. And what I say in the book and talk about here is it enables us to then become our unencumbered selves. Instead of being encumbered by these things we're living in reaction to, we become unencumbered. We become free. And when we're unencumbered, then all of our gifts, purpose of life, all of our gifts can come forward, right? And it's really analogous to like a happy 3-year-old kid at a birthday party. It's like, no, this is me. This is great. Isn't this wonderful? And we can bring all our gifts forward. And I think that's really part of the concept of living young for a lifetime, is becoming unencumbered by these things, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there is, like I would also mention what has been coming up for me for the listeners. There is a very practical part of that as well, because by doing that and by really managing to forgive in a way that you understand what are the triggers that you make you react in a certain way, and that they are actually like false concepts and like constructs you hold on.
That's right.
By releasing them, you are as well releasing so much energy that you can actually use for living younger and feeling younger, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we tie up all this psychic energy in holding these, positions, if you will. Um, Another key one is the idea of forgiveness. I never really had a clear concept of forgiveness. I think because if somebody said, well, I forgive you, or if I said something to somebody and I said, I forgive you, I don't know, I didn't really feel anything happening there, right?
Mm.
And so I had an insight that forgiveness is not that, actually. It's not saying you forgive somebody. What I realized is that when we have an interaction with somebody, well, let me back up a step. You and I right now, we have this unrestricted flow of positive regard for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just unrestricted flow of positive regard. And yet, if something were to happen where all of a sudden, something happened and you felt one way or I felt one way, we might say, oh, well, that person's not for me. And we would put up this psychic barrier. I'm no longer going to allow unrestricted positive regard to flow towards Miguel, right? And certainly I'm going to put up a barrier to whatever he's sending this way, right? And I think forgiveness is when we actually lower the barrier. We take the barrier away, because it takes a lot of psychic energy to hold that barrier up.
Mm.
It takes a lot of psychic energy. And you've probably read or heard that it's said that when we forgive, we're actually freeing ourselves from the bond, right, of being tied to that other person, right? So I think this is a concept also that people can think about. Who are you holding a wall up against? It could be an ex-spouse, a friend, a business partner, whatever. Where are you holding those walls up? It takes a lot of psychic energy to do that. What if you were to take those down and say, no, I'm just going to will myself to feel unrestricted positive regard for this person. And if there's something coming back the other way, I'll be happy to receive it. Right. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, everything's fine. Right. No big deal. And you
Yeah,
free yourself from all this construct. Right. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's the other thing connected to that is actually whenever we, and everybody can actually, when we focus on that, we can very clearly experience that when we are attacking somebody else, we are
that's right.
suffering as much. Actually, we are suffering as
Totally.
much.
Totally. Yeah, when you're attacking somebody else, you're almost attacking your own being, right? You're leveraging your own health, your own psychic health, your own physical health. And I think if we're going to live young for a lifetime, we need to shed ourselves of all these stresses that we put on ourselves, right? So that's why I think the psycho-spiritual space is so important, like you
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Dr. Gladden, at the end, I would like to shortly touch on technologies because I've
Yeah.
seen and I've read that you use a lot of cutting edge technologies. Healing with Coherence is founded by Radiant Life Technologies, which is a company which actually operates with camera therapy. And camera therapy is based on photobiomodulation, low-level laser, magnetism,
Mhm.
ultrasound, and color lights.
Yep.
And I'm curious actually to hear what kind of technologies have you been using in your clinic and what is your experience with photobiomodulation and so on?
Yeah, we like photobiomodulation. I used it this morning, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, in conjunction with some binaural beats, to put my brain into an alpha state, right, which is a meditation state. Um, so we like that. We like red light therapy. We like, saunas. We like ozone. Um, we can rebuild people's brains here with transcranial magnetic stimulation, a
Mm-hmm.
modified form of that. We're very big on um, doing things in sequence. So for example, if you're going to rejuvenate something, the first thing that has to be done is you have to understand where are they, right, in that mosaic of ages. And maybe they're complaining about cardiovascular, but you really need to understand, well, what's going on with their liver and their gut and all that. If you don't understand the full picture, you'll never be able to fix the target organ. So deconstructing, I think, is what we do incredibly well here, which is to speak with someone and then deconstruct their situation to understand fully kind of where they are to the best of our ability. And we're always looking to do that better, of course. Then from there, we find that there are things that need to be sort of changed in their environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can do a lot of things to rejuvenate them, but if they go back into the same environment and just trash it again, it's not going to last, right? So trying to clean up the environment, right? Get the heavy metals out if they're drinking too much, if they're eating foods that are completely, incompatible with them, things like that, kind of cleaning up the environment. Maybe they've got, maybe they picked up arsenic in their water and they've got, mold in their house. If you don't clean up that environment, you'll never get where you want to go. So that's number two. And then from
Mm-hmm.
there, we like to do things like plasmapheresis and EBU, where we can actually take out the trash, right? Because as we as we age, we tend to build up lots of senescent cells and different cytokines that basically potentiate inflammation and the aging process of inflammation. And aging itself increases inflammation, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
like to kind of clear out the slate there. And then we want to do things to re-lengthen telomeres and we want to improve mitochondrial function. But then we also want to go in and we want to start to use rejuvenation factors like stem cells, like cell factors that come from, embryos, or not embryos, but from placenta and umbilical cords and things like this. So where we get really, really strong rejuvenation exosomes and things like that. And when you start to do that, and then you couple it with peptides and you couple it with other energy medicine tinctures and things that we have actually that can modulate the body's energy, and you use photobiomodulation and PEMF and other things. You put all that together into an orchestrated approach, you can get remarkable results for people, right? And this is why it really takes an orchestrated approach to actually get where you want to go. You can't
Mm.
just throw new wheels on an old Ferrari and it's good to go, right? You've got to kind of reconstruct the whole thing. First, you have to deconstruct it, then you got to put it back together. So that's kind of how we think.
Okay.
So,
Okay. That's amazing. How far, like when I mentioned camera therapy, and camera therapy is based on the philosophy that there is an inner intelligence in the body that actually can heal itself or can
mhm.
best do what it is meant to do.
Yeah,
And camera is a way, as actually photobiomodulation as such is, and camera is, let's say, like a more advanced way of photobiomodulation, or using electromagnetical radiances to create the environment which allows the body to do its work the best way it can do.
right.
How far do you feel and think, in your experience, one should go in terms of cooperating with the inner intelligence, or being invasive in terms of actually trying to do the work instead of the inner intelligence of the intelligence of the body? And I know that there are the two approaches available in the world today. But where is the balance, let's say, between both of them in your own philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the body heals itself, right? The only thing that we're trying to do is to work in conjunction with it. I think it'd be incredibly arrogant to think that we can fix the body, right? So all
Mm-hmm.
we're really doing, even with the things that I just outlined, is essentially trying to detox the body and take things out, things that are inhibiting the body from healing itself, right? And then interrupt some of the processes that are actually driving the current in the river to give the body a chance now to actually be able to heal itself. But ultimately, the body heals itself. But it's not enough to just have photobiomodulation. That's not enough. There's other things that are holding the person back, right? And it's not enough just to boost mitochondrial function or even to get them really, I think, fully aligned spiritually. Although miracles can happen, I'm not going to say they don't. But if you're looking at this while you're getting all that done, let's take out the heavy metals. Let's get their gut working properly and things like that. Because now all of a sudden, the ability to go back in time and really be youthful and get healthy again and live young for a lifetime, that's kind of how I see that all work together. There's no one thing that we think is not important. And certainly mindset, spirituality, and the whole piece of it. And even down at the quantum level, we're working with some infoceuticals that basically work at a quantum level in the body to adjust energy fields in the body and things like that, right? So we're conscious of all that, try to be, and we're always open to more, right? We're always open to learning. So we're not married to any answers that we have. We're only asking the questions. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing you saying is actually looking into ways how not to stand in the way of the body or of its healing intelligence,
that's right.
and actually all those heavy metals and toxic waste which we fit into our bodies are a way of standing in its way, right? So i
That's right.
understand i understand the philosophy of actually
Yes,
making sure that we get rid of those and then only going
that's right.
into it is a way of how to support the body's intelligence.
That's correct. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, if you had a child that was in school and you wanted ultimately the child's going to learn, right? I mean, they're the ones their brain is going to absorb the information. But if they've got all kinds of distractions and bad food and they haven't slept and, there's all these toxic air in the room and all this stuff, how are they going to focus? So really, it's ultimately the child's going to learn. But if you can clear the environment, right, to enable them to actually, you know, be able to do it themselves, that's really what we're talking about, right? So, yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Dr. Gladden, my last question, closing question, what would be your message to all people listening that would like to live young or feel younger for the remaining part of their lifetime?
I really think it starts with write down the questions that you're asking, right? I outline the four that we ask every day, right? How do we make 100 the new 30? How do we live young for a lifetime? How good can we be? How do we crack the hay-feather limit and live well beyond 120? But you may have your own questions. Also, move away from a binary concept of being married to your answers, right? Because the answers are dead ends, right? They're dead ends and they lead to binary thinking and they only lead to stress. If you switch from that form of thinking into being married to your questions and taking on this quantum sort of thought process where you're looking for solutions from the field of all possibilities, and then you look at yourself and you ask yourself, what am I living in reaction to? And can I clean that up so I can become unencumbered? This will free you up. And from there, then it's going to be all the things that you know to do and the things you know not to do, right? Sleep, exercise, clean air, grounding. I mean, everything that's important that everybody else talks about, all of that then starts to work for you. So, and then I think if you're really serious about this, the next thing you want to do is, okay, what are my genetics? Right? Where do I stand? And there are different companies out there. If you're going to do one test, I think Intellex DNA is a really good one. It's located in Austin, Texas, and what makes them exceptional is that the reporting is so comprehensive, and it's so actionable. So
Mhm.
they don't cover we combine that with other complete genome sequencing, but if you were going to get one test to start, you wouldn't go wrong to start there. And then think about, okay, so now you're starting to know the cards you're holding. then you need to have this exponential strategy. So if you understand that, oh, I'm gonna need to work on my mindset and spirituality and solve these problems and things like that. And now I need to understand, well, what are my health metrics, right? Or my longevity metrics, right? Like, what are my telomere lengths? What's my mitochondrial function? You know, what's my senescent cell burden? Things like that. All that stuff's measurable, right? So if you start to go down that path, and you don't have to do everything at once. But if you realize, okay, this is the path I'm on, it's like getting a PhD, right? You don't do it in 30 minutes. You don't, you basically start and you start doing the initial coursework to build yourself into it. But just realize that the payoff on this investment of time, attention, and resources is 1,000-fold, right? It's 1,000-fold. What you get back is 1,000-fold. You'll be able to make more money, have better relationships, carry on for years when other people are retiring. I mean, it'll send you on a trajectory that's completely unrecognizable to your peers, right? Who have just decided that, hey, I want to go to the beach and get a condo and see the grandkids on the weekends, right? So, I mean, literally in a decade or 2 decades, they'll be unrecognizable, right? Like you'll go visit them because you love them as they're winding down, but you'll be vibrant and doing stuff. It's like, well, we started a new company, we did this, and we're doing that, and all this stuff. It's like a beautiful life, and it's yours. Just like what's the value of getting a good education? Well, it opens up a world of possibility, and that's what this does too. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, it's basically, it goes down to not really counting how many more years I live, but how many more experiences do I get
Yeah.
into my remaining years, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Tons. So many.
Thank you, Dr. Gladden. Amazing conversation. It's been really an honor to have you on Healing with Coherence. Thank you
Oh,
so
my
much.
pleasure. My pleasure, Miguel. I love your perspective on this and your sincerity around it. I think you're coming at it from the right perspective, quite honestly. So I congratulate you on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone listening and watching this interview. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for staying with us till the end, and I'll be looking forward to greeting you with another guest very soon. Till then, good luck to all of you, good health, and thank you, Dr. Gladden, once more time. Have a good day, and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.